We're here for another edition of the Rival Podcast, and today we have a special guest. Former world champion George Kambosos is here at the Rival headquarters in Montreal. He'll be facing off June 14th on DAZN for the world title at 140 pounds, the IBF belt against Richardson Hitchins. It's going to be on DAZN, and we're pleased and privileged to be joined by George Ferocious Kambosos. George, how are you today?
It's awesome to be here in Montreal, obviously to come to the headquarters of Rival to see everything behind the scenes, see all the gloves, and obviously we setting up our beautiful gloves for the big fight. It's amazing to be here and honoured to be sitting down with you guys.
What about the decision to come to Montreal? How are you enjoying the city so far?
Montreal is, it's a beautiful city. Obviously, I'm in training camp, so I don't have too much time to be able to, sightsee. But on our rest days, we have gone out and had a look at a few places. But it's great because the decision was, look, this is a big fight. I couldn't be doing this back home in Sydney. Obviously, you've seen when I'm in Sydney for the last fight. It's pretty crazy for me. I'm, big name obviously worldwide, but a very big name in my home of Sydney, Australia. So we said, okay, where do we move the camp? Do we do it in the US? And then we had Imam Khatiev obviously going to fight. It was looking like he was going to fight June 5th here. So we kind of planned to say, you know what, let's do the camp in Montreal, Canada, because one, we're on the same time zone as New York, which works fantastic for the fight. Two, obviously would have been great for Imam fighting, here in June 5th, but obviously that's moved now. He's got an even bigger fight. And also easier to bring sparring partners in from the US, sparring partners from Canada, and just have a nice, good place where I still get noticed here. Believe it or not, I still get noticed wherever I go, but not as crazy. So it's a lot more quieter for me. And I'm away from my kids, my family, my comfort, focused on one job. Train, eat, sleep, train, eat, sleep.
What about the decision to do training camps even at this stage of your career? Did you always prefer going away for training camps, or is this something that you've implemented for this fight specifically?
No, I built my whole career by, especially in the American part, when I came to America, and obviously everyone started talking about who's this Kambosos guy, who's this guy starting to come through the ranks. My training camps were always overseas. If, the US fights, I was training in America. If I was with Manny Pacquiao for a long time, I was in the Philippines. The big fights, obviously against Lopez, Selby, Mickey Bay, all in America. And then when I became champion, we did take the camp, obviously, back to Australia. Look, it was fantastic because having the big fight in a stadium in Australia, you needed to be home, to work with the media, to have the right, obviously, social media guys and everyone there promoting the big event. But for this kind of fight, this, opportunity, me being back to the big stage again, this time in my career, taking it so, extremely focused and so important. I said, look, we've got to be overseas again, no distractions. So, that's how my career was brought up. Doing the hard camps, being away from my kids and family, being away from the comforts, not driving in my, beautiful car to my own private gym and, having everyone, I'm driving to, a solid gym where there's other champions there and guys that, are pushing you as well. That's what I needed.
Has that been difficult at times, being a world champion and being more of a known celebrity, if you will, in Australia? Having the fame is interesting, but is that sometimes a little bit of the backlash of it, is also knowing that you're going to have more distractions or more people around wanting your attention, and that's why it's good to get away for training camps?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, when you're in Australia, when you're in Sydney, there's always things you got to do. No matter if you're 2-3 weeks out from the fight, there's always a little bit of commitments. Again, I'm a family man as well, so when you got your kids and family there, my wife might not be able to do something, take the kids to school that day. Can I do it? Can I train early and do it? So that's small little distractions, but for this kind of fight, we didn't want absolutely any distractions. Extremely focused, one mission, tunnel vision, and that's June 14th to become 2-division champion of the world. That's cementing legacy, cementing, my status of who I am.
June 14th against Hitchins on DAZN, New York City, Madison Square Garden. Huge fight. But I want to go back a little bit to maybe the beginnings of your professional career, or even your boxing career as a whole. Some of the questions that a lot of the fans have asked us to ask, and one of them is, the stories of any pro fighter is a bit different. There's some similarities. Can you explain a little bit how you got into boxing in the first place?
Yeah, I fell into boxing. I was playing rugby league, which is the national sport in Australia. Everyone loves, the football. And I was an overweight, Greek Australian, kid who loved to go to his grandmother's place and eat a lot of food. And, I started stacking on a bit of weight. So to help make my rugby league better, we said, look, we've got to do something in the off-season. You can't do 6 months of football, get a bit of fitness, and then do 6 months of sitting around and, eating and just, being a normal kid. So we fell into boxing. And that first day I went to the gym, it was the smell of the gym, the raw aspect of fighting, of boxing, is something you probably understand. You fall in love with it. And a lot of other kids, especially being overweight, being bullied at school, being a kid that was very shy, not the kind of person I am now. A lot of kids would have turned around and said, no, I'm going to go home. I can't do this, Dad. This is not for me. But I stuck her through week by week. And eventually I started shedding so much weight off me. My rugby league got better. When I went back to rugby league, my boxing got better. And it came to the point where, obviously, the coach that I had back then said that, hey, it's time for you to have an amateur fight. And I, jumped to it. I said, let's do it. I won my amateur fight. And then, obviously, I never looked back. As my boxing career progressed, my rugby league career progressed as well. And I did make some really good representative teams in rugby league. But my heart was for boxing.
There you go.
And it came to the point where I said, no, I want to be a fighter. I want to give everything into being a world champion, to have this dream of getting to the top. And whatever it takes, whatever sacrifice I had to go through, and a lot of fighters go through sacrifice, but I think the ones that get to that top echelon, the top of world champion, undisputed champion, you got to go through even extra. And I went through a hell of a lot of sacrifices throughout the whole career, a lot of ups and downs, but I always stuck true to my training, always stuck true to the gym. No matter what was going through, my ups and downs, wins, losses in the amateurs, get knocked out, injuries, I always stuck true to being in the boxing gym. And that was my home.
And that's something I've noticed is pretty much in common with a lot of the fighters who do end up making it to have a success or even to the level of a world championship. It's not always the most talented fighters from the get-go, but a lot of persistent and perseverance of staying through, because even a lot of talented kids in the gym when they're teenagers or whatnot, I don't know if you agree with this or not, George, but you see them then drop out, get distracted, and it's the ones who stick to it who really eventually are able to compete at the highest of levels.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Look, I've never been a guy with extreme talent. And people see me now, wow, you're so fast, you're explosive. But I had to build to that, I had to work on that. The talent that I did have was a lot of heart, a lot of courage, a lot of willpower, and a lot of dedication. And once I really had a goal and a vision, and I could see it, I could see me, even at 11, 12 years of age, I could see me one day holding, a world title, becoming a champion, becoming somebody. And that's what drove me. That's the talent that I had, the drive to be, somebody through hard work, through talent. Because like you said, I've seen it so many times. Kids will come into the gym and they'll be extremely fast or great footwork or great, punches. And you think, well, and you inspire them and they'll beat you up. I think, wow, this kid is extraordinary. He'll be champion for sure. What am I going to be? But it's the ones that stick to it, and I stuck to it, and all of a sudden that kid would go for a week, come back, go for a month, come back, go for a year, and never come back. While George Kambosos Jr was there every day, every day. Right. I'd lose a fight in the amateurs, and next morning I'd be running 10 kilometres, put a sweatsuit in the stinking hot weather of Sydney to punish myself. That's the kind of person I was, to punish myself. No one else telling me, not my dad telling me, not my mum telling me, not my trainer telling me. Me, myself telling me that, hey, you lost. Okay, push yourself even harder now. Let's go. And that's the kind of guy I've always been.
How do you keep that drive now, knowing how much you've had the big fights, you've made money, you've been at the top level? How does that drive still exist compared to when you were younger, of course, and didn't make anything yet?
Yeah, a lot of people ask the same question. They see the way I train and the sparring partners that we bring in, they say, wow, you train like an absolute, beast. And how do you still have that drive, 31, 32 years of age, to still be able to get up for big fights and be able to push yourself, to extreme limits? it's very simple. It's not about really making any more money, winning more world titles. That's, the bonuses. That's going to come with it. But for me, really, it's legacy. I've always been big on legacy, and catching the feeling. It's the feeling that you very hard to describe unless you've been there. And when people say you can't do it, or he's not there anymore, he's finished, that's the drive, that's the motivation, catching that feeling. And I know that becoming a 2-division champion, that feeling of proving everyone wrong, that's what drives me, that's what motivates me.
And when you look at the rest of the division, or some of the bigger names at 140 pounds, many of them fought in New York City a few weeks ago on a big card in Times Square. What did you make of the performances of the Devin Haney's, the Teofimo Lopez, and Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia? Did you watch that show? And if you did, what did you make of the performances?
Yeah, look, I look at the division, and it's guys that are very familiar to me, guys that I've beaten, guys that I've fought, like Haney, 24 rounds with him, guys that I know. So I know exactly where I am. But looking at that card, it was a different kind of show. People were not expecting. But I think when you put two such high-level guys, sometimes the fights can happen like that. We see more of a chess match. We see more of people being hesitant. Now, look, I'm a straight shooter, as much as me and Lopez have that bad blood. And I think Lopez performed well. I think he wasn't extraordinary. I think Barboza might have been a little bit cooked of having so many fights back to back, and I believe that could have been a big factor. He didn't look like the kind of guy that we've seen in the past, but again, Lopez, explosive, dynamic, but you give this guy confidence, you give this guy room, you see what happens.
Yeah.
You see when you don't give him that, what happens. Now, Devin, good friend of mine, big respect for him. I think he needed that fight. As much as he's copping the backlash, he put on a boxing performance.
Yeah.
It wasn't extremely entertaining, but he won the fight clearly, and he's a confidence fighter. He needs, to get that win back. Obviously, what happened after the Garcia fight, and I'm sure we'll see an even better Devin Haney. But again, a lot of people are going to be thinking, is Devin back? Is he, the person he was? Is he the guy that, when I fought him, that version? People are going to wait to see. And again, the big upset. We knew that there was going to be an upset somewhere. And Rolly, shocked everybody, shocked the world. But again, what kind of Garcia was that? Was that the Garcia that we've known? Obviously, you ask questions. People said he's not as crazy as what he was. He's toned himself down. I kind of turned it back and said, well, maybe sometimes a fighter needs that crazy. They need that mayhem. Maybe you're not going to see the right version of him. So, hey, credit to Rolly. Yeah. A big win. And look, the division again keeps moving.
Yeah, that fight was contested above junior welterweight, but Ryan Garcia, of course, has been a junior welterweight before.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the bad blood between you and Teofimo Lopez. We know the history well, but is there still bad blood between you and Ryan Garcia? That some of the social media stuff you guys
there was
had?
a bit of back and forth back then, but again, he went out and apologised, and he said what he said, and he goes, look, I didn't mean it, and I apologise, I'm crazy, whatever. Look, I'm the kind of guy that I like to deal with things face to face, so if we do bump to each other face to face, you can apologise, and we move on from there. But look, I'm at a point right now that I'm seasoned. I'm a more mature George Kambosos, and I have one focus on my vision right now. My tunnel vision is to become champion again, and beating a loud mouth like Hitchins.
So some of the opponents, you mentioned Devin Haney, you had 2 fights with, and you consider him a friend. Others with Teofimo, I don't think you would consider Teofimo Lopez a friend. Does it that, even before a fight is announced, you have a feeling towards an opponent, or is it because of what happened afterwards? Why is there separation between like a guy like Haney that you consider a friend now and a guy like Teofimo which you do not?
Look, me and Teo had a big bad blood build up, and then the fight was, to me, it was a fight of the year. Absolutely, historic fight where both of us at that point had the respect, and I still got a respect for him. I'm sure he's got respect for me. But then after the way the fight, played out after, and he's just never been able to accept it, and always been, very bitter towards that loss, that I took, off him. So, he's gone back and forth. I've gone back and forth, and who knows? I'm sure that's a big fight, that can still happen. I think that's a fight that, the world would love to see, and my plan is to become champion again, and we'll see what happens then. But again, look, Devin Haney leading up was a bit of bad blood in the first fight. A lot of things were said. I was a bit crazy at that stage. Press conferences, calling people certain things. But, when you're trying to sell out a big stadium, it's not easy, and, we have to do what we have to do. But for now, there's a lot of respect there. We talk all the time. And again, like another guy that you guys are very close with, the great Vasily Lomachenko. That's a man that leading into the fight and after the fight, having the pleasure to fight him, and even as a young kid coming up, Lomachenko is a gentleman, same faith, religious man, and I got the utmost respect for him.
And he was the best you fought in your career?
Very tricky. But it's hard to pick between him and Haney because different kind of styles, but Loma was the most trickiest and made you keep thinking. And I feel like the Lomachenko version that I fought was a guy that came with a lot of vendetta to the sport, and that was a very good version of him. He'd given everything he had. So definitely between him and Devin and Teofimo, they're high level guys. We're all high level guys fighting the best.
I assume if you become champion again, that will probably be one of the highlights, trying to be a champion in another weight class. But up until now, was the Teofimo win still for you the highlight of your night in your career?
Look, it's the big moment, obviously becoming champion. When you become champion, going to the hometown of somebody is a huge moment. Of course, it's the highlight where people always remember. But I think the lead up is to get to that moment is always special too. Like going through the road, I went through Mickey Bay at Madison Square Garden, his hometown. Lee Selby in London, he's part of the Woods, his hometown. Beating these former champions, and then getting my shot, they were special. That run through was special. And again, doing the big fights again with Devin Haney, 45,000 in the stadium. And again, taking that, I take everything with me. The wins, the losses, the draws, whatever way it comes, I take the experiences with me. So they're big moments. And again, fighting Lomachenko. Yeah. I'm not sure if you were there at that arena.
I wasn't in Perth. No, Russ was, of course, Russ Amber, yeah.
Sold out. We beat the UFC record. Absolutely packed to the rafters. You couldn't see one empty seat. And the way this RSC Stadium arena was it just went up like a cauldron. And I think even Lomachenko fighting at such great arenas, and I fought at such big arenas, I think both of us would look back and say, that was something special.
And now we're looking at potentially Madison Square Garden. Hitchins, an American.
Yes.
Do you expect to be kind of the villain, the underdog from the fans' perspective in this fight? And if so, how are you enjoying the pre-fight press conferences and the back and forth you've had with him so far?
Yeah, definitely. I believe I'm the underdog, on paper, but mentally, no. Physically, no. I feel that whatever this guy brings, he has not been at the level I've been at. He has not been at the positions and the fighters that I have fought. We have seen certain fights of his, and we've seen certain fights where he looked terrible, where he just scraped through. So, look, I might be the underdog on paper, but for me and my team and the way we physically feel right now and what we're bringing to the table, no, I don't feel like an underdog. Now, am I going to be the villain? From social, and you always get a good point from social media. I feel like I'm the fan favourite. I feel like a lot of people hate him. Now, it's crazy how many American fighters are reaching out to me and saying, beat that guy up, smash Hitchins, because they do not like him. They really don't like him. New York, I was getting a lot of love there. He wasn't getting too much love. The social media posts, obviously prior to the face-off, a lot of love for me. A lot of support. So, look, there's a lot of Australians, a lot of Greeks, in New York, and I really believe that we are, going to have more fans than what he has, because I don't feel like he has a fan base.
And where does he rank for you now in terms of some opponents you've had this animosity with before, others you've been very respectful towards? How does he feel right now, Hitchins, versus some of the other ones you faced?
It's competitive nature. It does feel a bit like the Lopez fight, but he's, again, competitive nature. Two guys that are very competitive, and when we did have that first initial one-on-one that hasn't come out yet. Yes, competitive. Yes, a lot of back and forth, but also both guys that know what they're coming up against. He knows the kind of fighter that's coming against him, and I know what he's going to bring too. But like I said, I've been at this level. He's still coming up. I don't believe it's going to be enough.
Can't wait to see the one-on-one in the June 14th. Of course, the zone main event for the title again at 140 pounds, one of the 4 titles available. Your chance to be a world champion again. I have a few different quick hitters, if you will, George, before we let you go. One of them is about the Ferocious nickname. For those who don't know the genesis of it, how do you have the George Ferocious Kambosos?
That started when I was amateur. Early in my amateur career, I was having a local fight, and a couple of friends from school obviously came to watch me fight, and I've absolutely beat the shit out of an opponent. And one of the boys goes, "Man, that was Ferocious Kambosos," and it just stuck. And that's my fighting style, come with everything I bring, and throwing punches and being bloodied and blooding them up, and it just stuck.
If there was a movie about your life as a fighter, who would you like to play George Kambosos? You have a name in mind, any actor?
That's
There's a lot of good Australian actors as well.
Yeah, there is some good Australian actors. Could they be? They got to be present, or could be from the past?
Anytime.
Look, I think De Niro in Raging Bull. If you get like a young version of him, the way he played Raging Bull was incredible. And I think, my life, the ups and downs, the things I've had to go through, really crawling to become champion, and now this next part of my career, I think he would play a very good role as George Kambosos.
I like that. The Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull, makes a lot of sense. A little bit of Ferocious there as well.
Definitely.
And then, shameless plug, you've been wearing the rival fight gloves. You did wear some custom ones in your last fight in Sydney against Wiley. Plan on wearing them against Hitchins. Can you explain a little bit from all the gloves you've tried on and what made you go with rival, or maybe something that stands out with the fight gloves compared to some others you've had in the past?
Yeah, look, I've worn pretty much every single glove in every fight. And then once I started wearing the rival gloves for sparring, these are a nice glove, good fit. Don't even have to really break them in, they just feel right. And then was given some training gloves, tried them out, felt great on the hands, and I said, you know what? I saw a few guys wearing the gloves and scoring some beautiful knockouts and big shots, and I think after I fought Lomachenko, he was wearing a nice custom pair of rival gloves. I could feel his shots. I said, look, I think I need to make the move to rival now. I've been wearing them for sparring, led to wearing them for the fight. So I'm blessed, and they felt amazing, in the last fight, and I look forward to, making an even bigger impact in this next fight with them.
Can't wait to see that fight against Hitchins June 14th on the zone. For those who even can travel from Montreal to New York City, it's not a far drive or a far flight.
Definitely.
You may get a lot of fans supporting George Kambosos. George, thank you so much for taking a few minutes here in the rival headquarters, and we'll be supporting you June 14th.
Much appreciated. Great to be here, and God willing, June 14th, 2-division champion of the world.
Maybe just before I let you go, did you hear about the meal in Montreal, the fries with the gravy, the poutine?
Yeah, I haven't tried the poutine.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea if you're trying to make 140 for the fight.
Thank God I've come up from 135, so 140 is very easy for me these days. I can eat well, and we'll see. Maybe I'll tell my dietitian if we can sneak in and try. You got to try it.
Yeah, it's the local meal here that everybody talks about. Usually it's a post-fight meal, but maybe you'll be able to pack on a few pounds with that meal.
Give me a little bit extra strength.
Thanks, George. Thank you very much.
Thank you.